Welcome, everyone, to today's WOS monthly webinar on the role of NGOs in promoting LGBTQIA+ rights. My name is Stefano Eleuteri, and I'm delighted to be your host. The World Association for Sexual Health, WOS, is dedicated to advancing sexual health, rights, justice, and pleasure for all. Through these webinars, we aim to share knowledge, encourage discussions, and also engage with experts worldwide on critical issues affecting sexual health. Before we begin, a few housekeeping notes. Let us know where you are joining from in the chat. The views shared today are those of the speakers and may not necessarily reflect the official position of WOS. We follow the WOS Sexual Rights Declaration. Our information is evidence-based, inclusive, and culturally sensitive. Captions are available, and the live translation is available in multiple languages. Please select your preferred language using the interpretation button. We encourage engagement. Use the Q&A box for questions and the chat for general discussion. We will try to answer as many as possible, but not all may be covered. WOS promotes informed, healthy, and positive sexual behaviors for all. A recording of this session will be available and also shared via the WOS newsletter after the event. Stay connected with WOS. Consider also joining WOS membership for exclusive content and updates. Mark also your calendars for World Sexual Health Day on September 4th. The theme will be based on body, so the WOS will discuss about everybody in this event. And don't forget about the upcoming events that you will find in the chat. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our esteemed speakers today. So, the first speaker will be René de Klerk. It is really my pleasure to introduce René. She is the Executive Director of the World Association for Sexual Health, bringing more than 16 years of experience in academia, research, and sustainability consulting. Her career spans leadership, teaching, and research roles at both public and private universities, including academia, the Albert Luthuli Center for Responsible Leadership, and also the University of South Africa's Institute for Corporate Citizenship. She holds a BCom, LLB, LLM, and PhD in leadership. Her academic and professional work has focused on the social construction of leadership, integrating reporting, responsible investment, and also fiduciary responsibility, with social justice as its core. She has always had a strong passion for social justice, which has shaped both her research and her broader professional commitments. She also has taught in the areas of corporate social responsibility, responsible leadership, and the sustainable development goals that we know are really important for WOS. In addition to her academic career, René has worked in sustainability consulting since 2020, including with Trialogue, where she advised on integrating reporting strategy and transparency reporting. At WOS, René combines the strategic leadership with a deep commitment to education, health, and the development of responsible leaders. She is known for her strong communication, organizational and analytical skills, and for her passion for equipping young leaders to live and lead with purpose. So, our topic for today will be From Vision to Viability, Financing the Future of WOS, a look at how a global right-based organization sustains its commitments over the long term. So, thank you, René. we are willing to hear you.
So I don't know how many of you know that song by Neil Diamond. The song is called Forever in Blue Jeans, and the words go, money talks. It can't sing and dance and it can't walk. And the bottom line of the song is that he sings, it's such a pity that, we need money and we have to talk about money because I'll much rather be forever in blue jeans. And I can say that that is very true for my life, indeed. And it's probably why I also ended up working for an NGO, and why I'm not a corporate lawyer as what I'm qualified for. But I've always just been much more passionate about social justice and human rights. So it's actually very difficult for me to talk about money. But here I am today, and I, as the executive director of WAS, do sometimes have to speak about money. So, my topic today is from vision to viability, funding the future of wars. And I'm going to start by talking about Pride because we are in Pride Month, and this is the Pride Month webinar for wars. So I will make the case. We all know that Pride is one of the largest and most successful social movements that's ever been started or developed. And it started basically in 1969 at Stonewall Inn, where the police raided a gay bar. We all know the history of that. And so it developed over the years. You can just see a little bit of a timeline here. And today, Pride exists in more than 160 countries, and in some, it is still an act of profound courage. But something we need to remember is that Pride did not begin as a celebration. It began as a refusal to be erased. Oopsie, sorry, I skipped one and now I need to go back. So, what is the connection between wars and pride? So, when I was preparing for this, I came up with this little sentence. I think wars brings the professional to pride. So, pride is a movement, and WAS is the science, the standards, and the professional voice that gives the power. So, how does WAS and pride intersect? As most of you know, the vision of WAS is sexual health and rights for all. And all includes the LGBTQIA plus community. So it is not in WAS a footnote, it's actually very central to our mission. WAS provides science and rigor in this larger social movement. So WAS ensures that professionals that work in sexual health across all disciplines have access to the most current evidence-based science on sexual health, diversity, and LGBTQIA plus care. From activists to clinicians, so whether you are a comprehensive sexuality education teacher, a healthcare professional, or an advocate, WAS equips you with standards, knowledge, and a global community that has your back. And in our most recent publication, That was a result of the first ever World Sexual Health Assembly. The Porto Proclamation commits was to protecting sexual rights for all identities and orientations and eliminating discrimination in sexual health care and building inclusive professional communities. So, what is a social movement? Some see Charles Tilly as sort of the father of social movements, and it can be defined as a loosely organized but sustained campaign in support of a social goal, typically the implementation or prevention of a change in society's structure or values. And it is said that there are three defining features of a social movement. You must have a shared moral claim, something worth fighting for. So the vision of WAS is sexual health and rights for all. And I believe that is a worthy cause. That is something worth fighting for. You need to have some unity in the movement, so a collective identity that says we are in this together. And you need some numbers, so you need enough people sustained over time to actually make a difference politically, as we have seen with the Pride movement. Okay, so why do some movements succeed? The anatomy of a successful social movement is institutional infrastructure, a formal organization, a professional body with a legal entity and good governance systems, a clear normative framing, a rights-based, justice-oriented language that connects the specific cause to universal values. And then, of course, you need sustained funding, resources that are not dependent on a single donor or a political cycle, that is diversified, resilient, and mission-driven. And you need coalition and alliances with other organizations like other civil society organizations, academia, government, professional communities, and international bodies. So, that's what I'm building the case for today is I'm saying that WAS is more than a professional association. WAS is more than a confederation. WAS is actually a global social movement because we are fighting for a worthy cause that is sexual health, rights, justice, and pleasure for all people. And that is grounded in human rights. And that is a cause worth fighting for. Yes, we have unity. There are more than 80 plus member organizations and 6 regional federations in every region of the world. But we have one movement, although it's many voices. And I think since WAS has been in existence for 47 years, I think actually we're going for 50 this year. Well, no, it's 1978. So it's 47 years, sorry about that. So I think WAS has been here long enough so that we can say we have numbers and persistence. So WAS and the LGBTQIA plus community, science, rights, and care for all. WAS does not merely include the LGBTQIA plus community, it centers their rights within a universal framework of sexual health for all by bringing evidence-based standards. So WAS drives the science through our International Journal of Sexual Health, our partner journal, and our World Congress. WAS disseminates cutting-edge research on LGBTQIA plus health, sexual diversity, and gender-affirming care. So professionals everywhere deserve access to this knowledge. It's not just an ideology. Professional capacity through the WARS congresses, WARS webinars, our associate journal, WARS trains sexual health professionals globally to provide affirming, respectful, evidence-based care. And then WARS also does rights and advocacy through all of our declarations, but specifically also the WARS Declaration of Sexual Rights explicitly protects the right to self-determination, diversity of sexual orientations and gender identities, and freedom from discrimination and violence. And these are not only aspirations, they are the foundation of the work of WARS. So I'm saying WARS brings the professional to pride. But what is the problem? The problem is that the counter movement is organized, funded, and strategic. So the anti-rights movement operates centralized. They have long-term funding through conservative foundations. Legislative capture, we've seen more and more of this recently, especially in Africa, with regressive legislation being passed, where the LGBTQIA plus community will be criminalized and severely punished for their sexual behaviors. We see more and more controlling language where the parental rights and protection of children and protection of as the family is used as language to disguise what is actually the breakdown of democracy and individual rights. They are occupying multilateral spaces in the UN commissions and WHO forums, and they are definitely targeting NGO funding directly and using defunding as a political weapon. So the United Nations Research Institute for Social Development has indicated that the weaponization of gender is used to justify civic repression, centralize state power, and promote authoritarian governance, really the destruction of democracy. Defunding can be used as a political weapon, as I've said before. And here you can just see what's happened. We know about all the issues with contraceptive supply, cutting of comprehensive sexuality education programs, and advocacy infrastructure being broken down because of structural funding gaps that organizations like WARS are facing. So what can social movements teach us? And I'm going to use an example from South Africa. As many of you know, I am from South Africa myself, and the person who wrote this beautiful paper was actually my PhD supervisor, Prof. Neil Eccles. And he wrote this paper in 2010 about the UN Principles for Responsible Investment signatories and the anti-apartheid SRI movement, a thought experiment. And he argued that institutional investors who fund systems that violate human rights bear a moral co-responsibility. So in this case, all those who are funding the anti-rights movement, he argues that they have a moral co-responsibility. But what happened in this story is really that in the 60s, the anti-apartheid activists demanded divestment from South Africa, and this movement grew. And in the 70s and 80s, major pension funds, actually the California Pension Fund was a huge one, started to divest severely from South Africa. And by the 1990s, or actually by 1990, the economic isolation of South Africa was so severe that it really contributed directly to the amount of pressure that was on the National Party to end apartheid in its totality. So the lesson here is where you put your money is a moral statement. The divestment out of South Africa was solidarity made financial. Investment in wars is solidarity made institutional. And that is what I'm arguing for and pleading for today. So, the three principles that connect pride to wars and to decisions that you can make today is that movements need institutions to survive. So, yes, we are all part of a larger movement fighting for sexual health and rights for all, okay, which definitely includes the LGBTQIA plus community. And this community is central to our fight. But I also say that you cannot benefit from a movement and not fund it or not partake in it. So if you work in this area and you work in sexual health, in professional practice, or in whatever standing, you are part of the movement that helped build wars, but this also creates a responsibility for us all. So the anti-rights movement, we know, will outfund us if we let them. Silence is not neutral. While the movement celebrates the counter-movement, writes legislation, funds opposition research, and defunds the advocates. Funding wars is not charity, it is strategy. Sorry, just skipped a slide. Okay, so the history of wars, more than 47 years of leadership now, more than 80 plus member organizations, 6 regional federations, more than 160 countries involved. We have ECOSOC status, which means we have consultative status within the UN bodies, and we have working relations as an official CSO with WHO. All right. So this is all the reasons to, or some of the reasons, not all of the reasons to support WARS. WARS has a very unique position in the global ecosystem. We don't compete with WHO, UNFPA, or WPATH. We complete them. WARS brings professional legitimacy across the disciplines, scientific credibility, rights-based normative framework, global civil society convening power, and independence from government interests. And this enables so many of the other things that I already mentioned. I see that I do not have a lot of time left. This slide will just show you the major funding gap that has happened in the last 2 years. So you can see that massive dip in the funding of SRHR and really a global funding crisis for SRHR. So how can you support WARS as a social movement? There are many ways that you can show your commitment and you can choose what works for you. The number one thing you can do is you can volunteer. You can join a working committee if you have expertise. Very, very important, become a member. You can become an individual member or an organizational member, and we are working towards creating a new category of membership in WARS, and you can become a supporting member. Simply saying, I would like to support WARS and therefore I will pay membership fees every year. And that's a huge help. Or you can simply donate to any of our projects, and that can be any amount as well. Today, I will specifically ask you to become members of WAS if you are not yet, and also support our World Sexual Health Assembly. So, the World Sexual Health Assembly will this year take place in South Africa, in Cape Town, from 2 to 4 September. It will end on World Sexual Health Day, so actually take place on World Sexual Health Day. And for this project specifically, we have received a $30,000 US dollar matching donor request, which simply means for every dollar that is donated, the donor will match that. So essentially, your gift will be doubled. You can download a sustaining donor form here to pledge a donation for our World Sexual Health Assembly. The first one was last year, and the result of that assembly was, of course, the Porto Proclamation. And this year, we want to come out of the assembly with actual work plans for sexual health and rights for all. So, your support can deliver a successful World Sexual Health Assembly this year. You can become a member, or you can simply volunteer in our working committees. I would like to thank you for your time, and I would like to leave you with thinking about what the world would be without wars and what the world is with wars. Okay. But we need our movement to be funded, coordinated, and ready. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, René. It was an excellent presentation explaining also the importance of the Finance Committee in WAS. We remember that today we are presenting this webinar as part of the Finance Committee, and also, of course, the importance of helping WAS to explain from a scientific point of view the importance of pride, because it is really important to understand that in many countries there are still difficulties in understanding the scientific soundness of the pride and of the sexological movement. Unfortunately, also in Italy, where I'm living today, we are having some problems regarding sexual rights. So it is really important that we move forward to be able to continue with this. So Luis Perelman, Luis is a sexuality educator and social activist for sexual health, sexual rights, and sexual diversity. He studied in the Mexican Institute of Sexology. IMSX co-founded the first bookstore specialized in sexuality education in Latin America, El Armario Abierto, which became a member of the Mexican Federation of Sexology, the FEMES. He joined the board of FEMES and is a former president, member of the WAS Advisory from 2009 to 2025, co-chaired the World Sexual Health Day Committee, and is immediate past Secretary General Treasurer. So, his topic for today will be comprehensive sexuality education contributes to stronger activism in diversity with families and religious communities. Thanks a lot, Luis. Word to you.
Thank you. Good morning from Mexico. Buenos días from World Cup, one of the World Cup centers. Thank you for the organizing, and I'm very happy to continue with WAS. My topic is basically what is being done, what happens with people who are in sexology, sexuality educators like myself, and people who are and around us. And so my presentation is a little bit more practical. What happens between comprehensive sexuality education, what happens and how it relates to activism, and especially I will be talking about what happens with families. our, about sexuality, we we learn a lot of information. We have a lot of information. Uh, we learn mostly. I will show later myths and generalizations and fairy tales that we still maintain, and we still they are part of our uh, culture, and we you that is our information that we have around sexuality, in spite of a lot of better information around the world. We both things have happened, but we will see a little later where we are. And the basic, still many people just reduce sexuality to plumbing, what goes into what. So what are we up against? And the Porto Declaration mentions disinformation and misinformation. So we have a lot of false information, about the myths that I'm talking about. And this information is on purpose, which is deliberately intended to mislead and intentionally misstate facts. And thanks to internet and to more communications, the amount of disinformation and sometimes good information. But to be able to find what is good information and reliable and useful is very difficult. I have a little exercise. Here is the words we use in sexuality that we hear. Here we are in the English language. I'm sure in all your language is I'm we don't have to no censorship. But these are expressions and words that everybody knows also in their language. Since when do we hear them? Since we're young, and we hear them at home, we hear them with friends, and it's the communication that we have. That is my argument is people feel they know a lot about sexuality because they use these words all the time, because they hear the expressions. And what are the uh, the the meanings or the messages behind power, humiliation, uh, making fun of others, entertainment, and at the end, there's no possibility of learning how to, as at the beginning we said, was promotes healthy sexuality. If this is the only way to talk about sexuality, I will argue this is not very healthy, and it is only used for humiliation and fun and entertainment, and especially diversity in Spanish. Why don't I go forward? So words for diversity in English, and when I do this little exercise in Spanish, we get 30, 40 synonyms or expressions, and most the big majority are negative meaning. The connotation is negative because they use as Sharfur mentioned before, the feminine is considered less, and the masculine expresses the power and in the gender roles. And sometimes in the English language, some groups have reclaimed expressions like dyke and queer, but it's still whenever we use the message about diversity, the impression is bad, the demonization, sickness, problem. That is still the message that we have when we talk about diversity in the public. Can you? I would request Michelle. This is to show. This is last week in the Mexican Senate. A part of the the senator making fun of the opposition, not the people, the senator from the opposition making fun of people in power, and this I realized that you will hear it in English. He spoke in Spanish, but thanks to to IA, artificial intelligence (AI), you can hear what he said in English. Please run. I don't hear.
I think Morena in Coahuila kicked ass. 160 Liro.
Ruben Moreira made fun of Morena in the
Thank you.
Senate
That's enough.
after the election results.
So this party won 16-0 against the main party in one of the states, and he says we the main party gave the ass. So the message is who was penetrated, and the people who penetrated lost. So the simplified rule that we learn in our macho society is the one who the receiving partner or receiving person, the person penetrated loses, the receptive person. This is still the main rule or the main message, and that we still learn very well, and we hear it in the radio, we hear it in the street, we hear it in the media, in the comments that we see in all the TikTok, and that is still the game that we are playing, and it's very well learned. And this is where we are. This is the power. It's this powerful. So, and when we go into sexuality education, and we teach sexuality or we learn about sexuality, I myself, was part of the purity culture, so I was very scared of anything talking about sexuality. I didn't make fun with sexuality, but I was scared about talking about it seriously. But when I learned that you can talk seriously, this is very menacing, because this is the basic messages. Sexual orientation and gender diversity are not chosen, they are discovered. Reparative therapy is harmful. And now they want everything together, sexual orientation and gender identity. So here we say one thing is sexual orientation is who you love, is distinct from gender identity, is who you are. Sexual practices are not a guarantee of orientation or identity. Anal sex or who is penetrated and who is not doesn't have a guarantee of who the person is and what they enjoy and who they love. And we also talk about only intercourse and sexuality. The definition of sexuality, the definition of sexual health is much more than intercourse. So to talk about these messages, to give these messages, and to the attitudes that we use, to not to make fun of everyone, not to humiliate, to take out the power of these expressions that we have learned so well. This is very the people who are used to only speaking like I mentioned in the beginning, they are scared because they don't understand that we can talk seriously and naturally about sexuality and diversity. So, and it's revolutionary that to talk about sexual rights, and to say sexual rights are based on inherent freedom, dignity, and equality of human beings that include a commitment to protection from harm. And to talk about the non-discrimination, to say basically all human beings are worthy, and dignity and life and and at, and to have the pleasure to be to live and to enjoy oneself and this foundational to all human rights protection and promotion. So that's the declaration, the WAS Declaration of Human Rights, but it's based in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Here I want to talk about an example of an NGOs, and this is from the Family Acceptance Project, and how it relates to families. When there is rejection, when expressions and attitudes are used against children, the children. So I will mention the behaviors shortly, but when there is high rejection, these are the possible consequences in the health and of the children. 6 times more depression, 6 times suicidal thoughts, 8 times suicide attempts, 3 times more illegal drug use, and 3 times more STD risk. Where's my... So, and the main message is that if you reduce rejection from high to moderate, reduce a little bit, then the depression goes down a half, suicide attempts go down more than a third, and a fourth, and illegal drug use go down half. This is if we reduce rejection a little bit. And I will show you very exactly the research of Family Acceptance Project with Caitlin Ryan published since 2009. These are examples of behaviors that hurt, that we know about, that we hear around us all the time. Prevent your child from having a LGBT friend. Don't talk about the identity. Blame the child when others mistreat them. Pressure the child to be more or less masculine or feminine according to your beliefs or what others say to how it should be. Hit the child. That's one of the most common. Call your child negative names because they are LGBT or transgender. Or don't let your child participate in LGBT support groups or services. Try to change your child's identity or expression. All these are high rejection. So if we can, when we talk about with parents and we say, be careful when you use we have these attitudes about your children, this is high rejection, and these are the possible consequences as well as what I mentioned before. What can you do? You can please start to reduce, be aware of this. Don't make it less from high to moderate, or try behaviors that help. Here are some behaviors that help. Tell your child that your gender diverse child that you love them. Support their gender expression. Welcome their friends to your home. Require family and members to treat your child with respect. Use your child's chosen name and the pronoun, this in case of trans children. Find congregations, institutions that welcomes your groups. More and more religious communities are also becoming more inclusive and acceptance. These posters can be downloaded from the Family Acceptance Project. But these are examples of what not to do, reduce the rejection, and try to look for, these are acceptance and support. Speak openly about your child. Stand up for your child. So these messages are very powerful, and it's my son. When there's demonization, I brought my son to this world. She's a great human being. I am with him. I support. I walk with him, her. I love him or her, and I'm present and I support, I protect. The messages from parents, which is the basic work of parents, but we were saying directed to your also to diverse children. And when we have the situation of politics with the resistance, all these we're in the middle of the conservative backlash. And so these our tools as sexuality education are revolutionary, and they confront attitudes, and they give messages of hope, and they help people to realize that they can talk up differently, and behave differently, and learn differently about diversity, which is one of the messages of the basis of comprehensive sexuality education. Unfortunately, politics, and not only in sexuality education, they're subject to extremism, radicalism, and generalizations, to bring things out of context, to throw mud, to stigmatize, ridicule, to erase, demonize. So, or um, we end up with accusations and say everything is pedophilia or everything is exploitation, and we hide this exploitation. And in the end, we don't know exactly where we are. We want to fight all these violence, but that is why the conservatives have gained, because they use these fears and the extremism to use power again. And what I'm saying is parental support and acceptance of children is kryptonite to homophobia. When parents talk openly and directly, they really they have an impact also on public policy. And examples of these are I want to honor, and this is in Latin America. I co-founded the International Association for Family Diversity. And here we have parents who march for their children. The banners say, "I love my trans son, I love my trans daughter, I love my gay son, I love my lesbian daughter, I love my trans uh, um, brother." This is the picture from Medellin, Colombia. Families united for the rights of our sons and daughters. I want to honor Miriam Angel she's here in the green shirt. Their banners say, "I love my lesbian daughter, I love my gay son," and we are proud of our sons and daughters, families for sexual diversity. This is one of the marches in Mexico City. Miriam Angel passed away sadly last year. This is Mariola Rubio in Culiacán, Sinaloa, with last week in the march in Culiacán, which is also rife with violence, and but she was very Catholic, very religious. She looked for help only in her ultra religious space, and now for the last 10 years she's the main voice for children, for their diversity, and she founded a group in Culiacán, and now she's the president of the association. This is Alba Reyes, whose son sadly and tragically took his own life in 2014, but she founded a foundation in his name to help children in a helpline for suicide, and she's a fighter against discrimination. The school provoked his taking his life, the rejection from the school. And she's a national icon in Colombia. This is Tania Morales, who founded an association to help her Association for Trans Children, and she's made real changes in law and policy in Mexico, and she's the director. So just to it's the revolutionary to talk about the same humanity and the same dignity. This is one of the sexual right it was about non-discrimination. And so the closing message is sexuality education, as the title says, contributes to stronger activism in families, but also the other way around. Families who learn about sexuality education and they live it, parents and mothers who express support with the knowledge of sexuality education, and they do it daily, they contribute to sexuality education and to public policy. So that's the strength, and even when in the face of difficult times, and the conservative are mostly in power today and they're using their power, there is still a lot of things we can do, especially with families and with other communities, religious, that we can talk about in other moments. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Luis, for your wonderful presentation. Now we have the opportunity to do questions to our speakers. So I ask you all to write your questions. While we are waiting, I read a comment from Renata. She says, wonderful presentation, just a note from a sexologist. Pedophilia does not equal sexual offending. It's an atypical sexual preference and is not automatically linked to offending behaviors. Yes, of course, we know that from the DSM-5, we have the opportunity to distinguish between paraphilias and paraphilic disorders. So, of course, thanks a lot for your clarification, Renata, but it is
That's what you learn when you study sexology, and you have in the academic, and you are in that opportunity to understand more and to talk about. But outside in the open world, pedophilia is the big,
yes.
the scary, and the way to destroy lives. Well, they do when it is a sexual offense, it destroys life, and it's unfortunately it's that is what is the expressions and the attitudes we use about sexuality. That's the only way. That's where most of us are in the world, and that's why we're stuck in that violence, unfortunately. Thank you, Renata.
Yeah, to understand, for example, how it is this situation of pride and what we are talking today in your country. So it is also interesting not just to do questions, but also to give us the opportunity to understand how is the situation in your home countries, and to see how this balance between pride on one side and difficulty in recognition that we still know is present in some situations.
I would only add that, for example, at the beginning of the century, equal marriage was the big topic, and in the United States, for example, it served as a electoral tool to gain power, because they said if equal marriage comes in and people can marry, it will be the end of civilization, and we have to save the family, and it's the worst things that will happen, and that's how they gain power. And lately, they are gaining power back with the trans issues, and they're scaring people and you take advantage of these myths and fairy tales that we maintain, and so they demonize all trans people, and or any idea of trans expression. Like Israel, or in Mexico, we have also populations like Mushes. And I was yesterday with Mushe community, by the way, in Oaxaca.
So,
Yes.
But we're in the middle of these political hurricanes, and and sexuality education and sexual health helps us see more clearly and how to help. That's
Thank you. Thank you,
yes,
Luis. Yes. Please,
Stefano,
René,
I would just like to comment on, on my own country, South Africa, and something that I think about very often is the difference between what is written in legislation. Like in South Africa, we have a wonderful, very liberal constitution that protects all human rights, but very often, what is written in law is not necessarily the or socially or culturally or accepted in the religion. In our country, we have wonderful pride festivals and there's a lot of support, but there's still very little acceptance from religious communities. And I think trans people still really struggle in South Africa because it's still culturally so difficult. Yeah.
thanks a
Thank you,
lot.
René. I'm a fan of mothers and parents and fathers who support their children. So because of the power that they have and they use when they use it.
Yes, this is true. Do you have some closing remarks, Luis, René?
I will
René.
just say that once again, I would like everybody present and even those maybe watching the webinar later on to invite you all to become part of the work of WAS if you are not part of it yet, by becoming a member of WAS or putting your hand up and saying, I would like to volunteer to work in some of our committees. The main response was to that, how are we moving from, only organizing scientific congresses and webinars and publishing in academic journals, is really one of our flagship projects that is now the World Sexual Health Assembly. And this year, the second World Sexual Health Assembly will take place on World Sexual Health Day on the 4th of September in Cape Town. And if you don't know yet what the World Sexual Health Assembly is, it is a very actually small but extremely high level meeting where all of the leading organizations in the world that work in sexual and reproductive health and rights are invited to sit around a table. And last year, we produced at that meeting the Porto Proclamation, but this year we want to take it further and we want to move into action and walk away with very specific action plans for the different regions of the world in that meeting. So I think that is really the big answer that WAS provides to this difficult question. Luis.
I would add that before the Porto Declaration, since the Cape Town Virtual Congress in 2021,
21.
We had that preoccupation that we said, because the slogan was "Leave no one behind," and so we said, what does that? How do you achieve that? It can't stay only as a slogan. So that's how we started thinking about justice and sexual justice and the Sexual Justice Declaration and the Sexual Justice working document that was published recently, led by Alain Jamy. So WAS is not a service provider and is not a funder. We are a confederation of educators and clinicians and activists and researchers, and we want to have that conscience to unify. And one other aspect is that sexual health professionals as we are, have historically not participated a lot in politics. So it's also like your presentation, to be more aware of how we can bring our sexual health into politics, and to as sexuality educators, which are the basis of everything we do. That's the power to show that we can change the culture. We can, in many places, that culture has changed, but it's still not so present. An example in Italy, that the rejection of adoption from same-sex couples, because they say it's terrible, it's bad. Well, that's not, and that's what I see a message from Alessia Bessi from Italy, and so as she says, I truly believe that sexual health and rights are a matter that should concern public health. Yes, that's we can. That's invitation. That's what we can do here, and those people who have access to other are in positions of power or in positions of influence. That's what we can the call for more conscience and more participation, to be more aware, and from this is the call from WAS. That's what WAS can do, and that's what and it's moving to a more practical operation besides the Sexual Justice Declaration. That's the assembly. So that's in a big effort to try to get things more really going, more concrete things going.
Okay, thanks a lot, Luis. Now we have to close this webinar. I want to remember that a replay of this session will be shared in the WOS newsletter, and that our next webinar will be on July 16th, hosted by the WOS membership committee. So please register, and you can, of course, follow us on our social media for updates and resources. You will find all the links to follow us in the chat. Thanks again for everything, and have a nice evening. Bye-bye.